Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. Some big transfer news for you today. It's about time we had some transfer news again on the channel. It has been a while. Maybe it's something to do with all those football games that have actually been going on at the moment, but never mind, no matter. It's the international break coming up now, and Liverpool seem determined to spice things up by getting some transfer business done and dusted. Fingers crossed. So of course the big news that came out this morning was that Liverpool have apparently made an absolutely massive bid for Monaco's Thomas Lemar. Now, there are different figures being reported for this bid. I think Sky Sports have said it's about £55.5 million or something like that. But there are other people, I think Melissa Reddy being one of them, of Goal.com, one of a very trusted few journalists on all matters Liverpool, have been saying that it's actually closer to about £72 million, potentially rising to 80 million with add-ons. That could be euros, I'm not entirely sure. But what is very clear here is that Liverpool are completely willing to smash their transfer record. They're willing to go absolutely big on Thomas Lemar and make a huge statement as well. And that for me is fantastic news, because while he's not necessarily one of these players that we've been going after all summer, when you look at the kind of player that Thomas Lemar is, apparently he's basically a winger. He can also play number 10 and he can also play attacking midfield. And if that sounds familiar, that's because it's basically Phil Coutinho. And while this doesn't necessarily for me mean that Phil Coutinho will be going this summer, I think it does mean that he's potentially Phil Coutinho's long-term replacement, because ideally if Liverpool were going to ship out Phil Coutinho, we'd be bringing in his replacement about a year before he goes. Because if we bring Thomas Lemar in now and then Phil Coutinho goes away next summer, then Thomas Lemar will have had a whole season to get used to Jurgen Klopp's style, to adapt to the Premier League. He'll be a year older as well, and at his young age of 21, that can mean a lot in terms of his progression as a professional footballer. So he will have developed a lot, he will have adapted, and he would potentially be ready to fill Coutinho's shoes by that point. Whereas if Coutinho went now, I think it would be too much of a jump to bring Thomas Lemar in already and say, do Phil Coutinho's job now. But all things considered, it would be a fantastic signing for us. And there's a possibility that Divock Origi could go the other way as well. I think that kind of makes sense, because we know that Monaco were very reluctant to sell Thomas Lemar to Arsenal earlier on in the window. So if Liverpool potentially said, Divock Origi, Monaco, you can have him for a season on loan and potentially even an option to buy as well, then it could sweeten the deal and then it could make it preferential for Monaco. And I think, to be honest, that works for all parties as well, because I've wanted Divock Origi to get game time. I think that's vital to Divock Origi's progression as a footballer, that he gets game time, and I don't think he's going to get it as Liverpool, certainly not on a regular basis at Liverpool this season. So it makes sense for him to move away to another club, and Monaco would be fantastic for him, because they are losing talent like an absolute sieve at the moment with regards to the players that are going out in the transfer window. So it is highly possible that Divock Origi would actually get time at Monaco. You know, he could be a regular starter for the team, and at a club like Monaco, with the amount of talent that they do have, even with the players that they have sold this summer transfer window, it would certainly do him the world of good to be playing around them. And if he does come back to Liverpool after a season on loan at Monaco, then he would be all the more a better player for it. So I think that the worry that fans do have going into this transfer is that with it being so late in the window and with it being such big money, especially considering that Arsenal were thinking more about 35 million or 40 million for Thomas Lemar early on in the window. We know that Monaco rejected that because I think partially they wanted more for him and partially they didn't want to let too much of their talent go, which is why the Origi loan could make sense and could potentially help us to push the deal over the line. But with the big figure being touted and the fact that it's so late in the window, and also the fact that we haven't really heard much about Liverpool's potential interest in Thomas Lemar for most of the transfer window up until this point, there's a suggestion that maybe this is more of just a last-minute panic buy to try and appease the fans. Because while we know that Liverpool have done a lot of work in this summer transfer window, they have been trying to bring players in and they have been willing to spend money, they haven't actually done that much with regards to actually getting deals over the line. And fans really haven't been happy about that. They've been vocal, they've made their opinions known to the owners about these issues. So there's a worry that maybe this is the owners thinking, oh, we'll just make a signing right at the end of the window, someone who is a big name, someone who will come in for big money and it will appease the fans. But I don't think it is that, because we know that Jurgen Klopp, he doesn't just bring in players for the sake of it. He will only bring in players that he thinks are good enough for Liverpool. And while last summer we didn't necessarily see him do any last minute business, so we haven't necessarily seen what it's like when Jurgen Klopp makes a last minute panic buy, so we are a bit in the dark on that. I still think that Jurgen Klopp would not be interested in making this signing unless he knew that Thomas Lemar was good enough. And we also know that he was very much interested in Kylian Mbappe earlier on in the transfer window, so we know that he's been sniffing around Monaco. We know that he's been looking at the talent that they've got available, so clearly he will know whether or not Thomas Lemar is good enough for Liverpool, and if we're willing to table a club record bid for him, completely smash our record and put forward so much money to get him, then I have every faith that Jurgen Klopp knows what he's doing and he knows that he will be bringing in a class player here. So of course Liverpool's bid, which is only a reported bid, it's not necessarily being confirmed by any major sources at the moment, but as far as we know from the fairly trusted journalists that have reported it, it sounds like we have made this bid. No matter how much it is, the bid is there. But as far as we know, Monaco haven't actually responded to it yet. So it's hard to tell whether or not this transfer will go over the line, and if Monaco do reject it, whether Liverpool will want the player enough to actually go in for another bid. But given that the window is going to close in a few days, I think we can expect this transfer saga to move fairly quickly, if it actually does move at all. So there's a little bit of other transfer news going on today. Oxlade-Chamberlain has been in the news a little bit because we know he wants to leave Arsenal. We know that Liverpool were a potential suitor for him at one point. Apparently he's looking to go to Chelsea now. That looks like that deal has got legs. It looks like it's going to get done between now and the end of the window, and Liverpool have pulled out of the race for him. If it hadn't been for the Thomas Lemar news, this would have disappointed me a little bit, but Thomas Lemar is basically like Oxlade-Chamberlain and that he is a winger, but he can play attacking midfield. If Oxlade-Chamberlain had come to Liverpool, I think attacking midfield is where he would be playing at the moment, because Liverpool needs someone who can link up the midfield and the attack with the absence of Coutinho. Obviously Coutinho may come back very shortly if he doesn't go to Barcelona and he recovers from that injury before the end of the international break, but I think Thomas Lemar is basically, he's like Oxlade-Chamberlain, but personally I think he's got more promise because he's younger, he's played in the Champions League for Monaco and he's impressed for them there. So all things considered, I'm not too fussed about Oxlade-Chamberlain going to Chelsea, because if Liverpool do manage to get the Thomas Lemar deal over the line, then we would actually have an improvement on the potential of Oxlade-Chamberlain coming to the club. Elsewhere, looks like Keita definitely isn't happening this summer, but there is a potential for it to happen next summer. And I think this is one of the reasons why Liverpool are actually going after Thomas Lemar, because the money is there. I mean, we've tried to spend that money on Keita and Van Dijk and it hasn't really worked out for us. And if we do sell Coutinho next summer, then we'll have another injection of cash. So we shouldn't have any problems signing Naby Keita if Coutinho does go next summer. So if we've got the money this summer and we don't need to hold on to it for any other windows that are coming up, then why not spend it on a player? And if Thomas Lemar is there and if Jurgen Klopp wants him and if there's a space for him in the squad as well, then there's no reason why the club shouldn't go after him. Clearly they've taken that stance and clearly they're very much interested in bringing in Thomas Lemar. As for the Van Dijk saga, not much news going on there. We're still waiting for Liverpool to table a bid. Until then, we can't really talk that much about whether or not there's any chance of Liverpool signing him, because we don't know whether Southampton are really that willing to sell. Obviously they sound like they're not, but things change a lot when a club bids for a player. And if Liverpool were to table 70 million for Virgil van Dijk, then it would show whether Southampton are really looking to keep Van Dijk or whether they're just trying to ramp his price tag up as much as possible. And I think Thomas Lemar is an exciting signing, but Van Dijk is a player that we desperately need. So hopefully Liverpool can do something with that. I mean, even if we are just saving face and not making a bid because of the whole debacle that happened earlier on the transfer window, just make a bid. Just make a bid, just put the money there, say it's there, and see what happens with Southampton. See whether we can test their resolve, at least, by throwing a lot of money on the table and seeing how they react to that. So, no news on Van Dijk at the moment, but hopefully, with the window obviously closing very soon, that will continue to develop and go somewhere between now and August 31st. And finally, Renato Sanches. There's been a little bit of talk about whether or not Liverpool are interested in taking him, whether that's on loan or permanently. We know that Bayern Munich aren't super keen on keeping him, so he is technically available on the transfer market, but apparently Liverpool not interested in Renato Sanches. They don't really want to bring him in, so that transfer basically definitely isn't happening. And all things considered, I'm not that fussed. I was never too excited about the possibility of Renato Sanches signing for Liverpool. He doesn't really seem like the kind of player we need. If we were to bring in a defensive midfielder, a strong defensive midfielder like him, I'd like it to be someone a bit older and a bit experienced rather than Renato Sanches, who is technically one for the future. For now, I'm happy with Emre Can kind of filling in that role, so no real problems there. Fine with Renato Sanches not coming to the club, so whatever, never mind, really. So that is all for today's video. Thank you very, very much for watching. Here's hoping that the Thomas Lemar deal will continue to develop between now and the end of the transfer window. If it does, then I'll be back with more transfer news videos to keep you guys all updated on what's going on. Until then, don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days. Follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter for any other news updates. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in a bit. Bye for now.